Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. I'm going to talk about the fetal circulation. Okay, this is the outline of my lecture. I'm going to talk about the fetal circulation first and how is this fetal circulation look like, and secondly I want to show you what happened to the circulation at birth and the remnant structure of fetal circulation in adults, what happened in fetal circulation if it is persists after birth. Before we go into the fetal circulation itself, firstly we need to know what is actually the difference between the circulation that is exists in postnatal or human life versus in fetal life. In human or postnatally, lungs are this organ that provides oxygen to the circulation through gas exchange in it. But in fetal, it is done by placenta. Where is the location of placenta? It's located in the uterus of the mother. The pulmonary system is not yet established. There are lungs in fetus, but the pulmonary system is not yet established. So no gas exchange occur in the lung during the fetal life. Alright. How is the blood fetal circulation look like? Okay. So, as I mentioned in the previous slide, the gas exchange is usually occur in the placenta, an organ that is located in the maternal uterine wall. Okay, the gas exchange occur in the placenta, and high oxygenated blood is flowing in the fetus through the umbilical cord, the vessel in the umbilical cords, and circulation takes place in the fetus, and heart is the organ that pumping the blood throughout the circulation. Okay. Before going to further, this is how the umbilical cord look like when you become a housewoman or medical officer or even ONG specialist later on. You will cut the umbilical cord when baby born. This is the structure that you have to look at or check when you cut it. You have to check for the umbilical arteries, make sure there are two umbilical arteries present, and make sure there is only one umbilical vein. Okay, how is the blood circulation look like? Alright, so it is easy for me to explain to you by putting number. Okay, it is a cycle, so that means it is not like it start here and it's end here. No, it is a cycle. So let's begin from number one. Number one is the deoxygenated fetal blood reach the placenta through the umbilical arteries. So this is our umbilical cord. A single umbilical cord has 3 vessels in it. The red colored vessel is known as the umbilical vein, and the blue colored vessel are the umbilical arteries. These are the two vessels that carry deoxygenated blood from the fetus. And the deoxygenated blood reach the placenta, and the gases, the nutrient exchange occur in the placenta, and the waste product is removed from the fetal blood. After this process, the highly oxygenated and nutrient-rich blood from placenta returns to the fetus through the single umbilical vein. So remember, it is totally different from postnatal life, where the vein carry high oxygen blood in fetus, while in postnatal vein carry the deoxygenated blood. Is actually the other way around in fetus. Alright, specifically in terms of the umbilical vein in umbilical arteries. Alright, okay, from the umbilical arteries there is deoxygenated blood, and the blood is flowing in the placenta for the gases and nutrient exchange to occur, and after that rich oxygen blood will be given back to the fetus through umbilical vein. Okay, from the placenta to the umbilical vein, and now from the umbilical vein the blood flows into the inferior vena cava. This inferior vena cava is up here, so the inferior vena cava. It enters the inferior vena cava by either two ways. It's either passing through the ductus venosus, okay, or passing through the sinusoid of the liver, okay, and a small amount of blood will enter the liver. Most of them will directly enter the IVC through the ductus venosus. Okay, ductus venosus. What is ductus venosus? Okay, let's take ductus venosus. Ductus venosus is a fetal vessel that connects the umbilical vein to the inferior vena cava. The blood that flowing through the ductus venosus is regulated by sphincter, which is located at the umbilical vein. How it regulates the blood, whether the blood is going to enter the liver sinusoid or directly into the IVC, is by contraction of the sphincter or relaxation of the sphincter. When the sphincter relaxes, there will be more blood passes through the ductus venosus. So relax, so masuk the ductus venosus. When the sphincter contract, the blood is diverted to portal and liver sinusoid. So liver is actually functioning well, where they remove all unwanted products, or they carry they enrich the liver for the development of the liver itself. Right, from the IVC, from the umbilical vein to the IVC through ductus venosus, most of the case they enter the ductus venosus, and some of the blood will enter the liver sinusoid. Alright, in the IVC, so this is the IVC. The IVC receives two types of blood. Either it is highly oxygenated from the ductus venosus and liver sinusoid, and poorly oxygenated from the lower limb and abdomen and pelvis of the fetus. Alright, when the IVC receives two types of blood. Either it is highly oxygenated, which is from the ductus venosus, and from the lower limb and abdomen, which is deoxygenated or poorly oxygenated blood. So IVC actually receives mixed type of blood. Okay, from the IVC, the blood enter the right atrium. IVC masuk the right atrium. Okay, the blood is not well oxygenated as in the umbilical vein, but still has high oxygen content. Okay, from IVC to the right atrium. Okay, the blood that enters the right atrium through IVC is divided into two streams by the presence of crystal dividend. So the crystal dividend makes the stream that flow in the right atrium into two. Most of the blood will enter directly to the left atrium, but some of them will join the blood that return from a superior vena cava to enter the right ventricle. Okay, can you understand this? The blood that enter the enter the right atrium, most of them will be flowing into the left atrium through the opening called the foramen ovale. Okay, how can they divide the blood that enter the right atrium into two flow? One is through the foramen ovale flowing into the left atrium, and how some of them will enter the right atrium in the right ventricle is by the presence of crystalline evidence that dividing the stream into two. Right? Okay, the IVC right atrium, some of them will enter the left atrium, and some of them will join the blood that return from the superior vena cava to enter the right ventricle. Okay, another picture showing this the blood that entering the right atrium, that most of them will enter the left atrium, and some of them will be joining the blood returning from the SVC and enter the right ventricle through an opening here, AV opening. Alright. Okay, this is just a repetition. Okay, from the right atrium, most of the time, most of the blood will enter the left atrium through the foramen ovale, and some of them will enter the right ventricle through the opening of the present between the atrioventricular opening. Okay. Okay, the blood that entering the right ventricle, okay, remember, some of it will enter the right ventricle is mixed type of blood because SVC carries deoxygenated blood from the myocardium upper part of the body, and from the right ventricle, the blood will enter the pulmonary trunk. Okay, will enter the pulmonary trunk. Okay, from the right ventricle, it will go to the pulmonary trunk. Okay. Small portion of blood from the pulmonary trunk reach the lung. Okay, only small amount of them into the lung. But the greater portion of the blood that enter the pulmonary trunk will enter the descending aorta through the ductus arteriosus. So this is the third shunting. Okay, the third shunting that is present in the fetal circulation. One is the ductus venosus, second is the right and the left atrium, and this is the third shunting from the pulmonary trunk straightway to the descending aorta. Okay, through the ductus arteriosus. Okay, right ventricle, some of them will go shunt into that descending aorta through the ductus arteriosus. What is ductus arteriosus? It's like the ductus venosus. It is a fetal vessel that connects the pulmonary trunk to the descending aorta. It allows mixed blood, which is medium oxygen content, from the right ventricle. Okay, from the right ventricle to perfuse the caudal part of fetal body. Okay, what happened to the blood in the left atrium? This blood is oxygenated blood from the right atrium that enter to the foramen ovale. Okay. Not only the high oxygenated blood, the left atrium also receive small amount of deoxygenated blood from the lung through the pulmonary veins. Remember, some amount of blood that enter the lung. So of course from the lung it goes back to the left ventricle through the pulmonary vein. So deoxygenated blood from the lung. Even though they have a small amount of deoxygenated blood that enter the left atrium, the blood in the left atrium is still very well oxygenated. Okay. From the left atrium, so it receives the less oxygenated blood from the right, and more blood from the right atrium. Receive less blood from the lung. Okay, from the left atrium, the blood passes into the left ventricle. So the left atrium to the left ventricle, and then into the ascending aorta. Okay, from ascending aorta, some blood passes through carotid and subclavian arteries that branching out from the arch of aorta to supply the brain, neck, head, and the upper extremities. And while the rest of the blood will mix with the blood from the ductus arteriosus and supply the collar part of the fetal body through the descending aorta. Okay, ascending aorta, some of them go to the upper extremities, head and neck, through the subclavian artery, and some of them will go to the descending aorta and to the other parts of the fetal body. After perfusion, the deoxygenated blood is carried by the umbilical artery, okay, to the placenta for reoxygenation. So they repeat the cycle. So for information, the umbilical artery in fetus is the branch of the internal iliac artery. Okay, this is how the circulation looks like from the placenta, and the umbilical vein passing through the ductus venosus or sinusoid of the liver. Okay, from the liver, the blood into the IVC. IVC also receive blood from the lower limb or lower part of the body. And from the IVC, the blood enter the right atrium. Most of the blood will shot directly into the left atrium through the foramen ovale, but some of blood will be joining the blood returning from the superior vena cava to enter the right ventricle through the AV opening. From the right ventricle, the blood will enter the pulmonary trunk. Some amount of blood will enter the lung, and most of the blood will enter the descending aorta through the ductus arteriosus. The blood in the left atrium will also receive blood, which is the blood from the lung, and also from the right atrium will be flowing to the left ventricle and eventually to the aorta and descending aorta. While AGH of aorta, it gives small amount of blood to supply the upper extremities, and the rest of the blood will be joining the blood from the pulmonary trunk to supply the lower part of the fetal baby. And deoxygenated blood will be returned back to the placenta for the exchange process through the umbilical arteries. Okay, that's all. A simple explanation on how the fetal circulation looks like. Now we go to the what happened to the circulation at birth. Okay, once the baby birth, the gas exchange occurs in lung immediately. The first breath leads to lungs expansion. So we must make sure with the baby born, the earlier the baby cry is good prognosis of the better. Okay. And umbilical cutting, okay, will stop the placenta circulation. In fetal, heart shunt become closed, no more shunt from the right atrium to the left atrium. Placenta circulation shut down. Number one is the umbilical arteries. Okay, the umbilical arteries. The muscle in the wall of the umbilical arteries contract. The lumen become occluded. This will prevent loss of fetal blood to placenta. So prevent blood from the fetus entering the placenta once the baby birth. Umbilical vein will also be occluded. This occurs few minutes after birth, not immediately, so that all fetal blood in the placenta has time to drain back to the newborn. And what happened to the foramen ovale? The foramen ovale, the opening, they provide shunt from the right atrium to the left atrium. Foramen ovale closes at birth. How this happen? The increased pulmonary blood flow causes more blood to reach the left atrium. So remember, the left atrium receives blood from the lung. This causes increase in fetal arterial pressure. So pressure in this chamber increases. At the same time, the right atrial pressure diminishes because there is no more blood from the placenta. So the pressure in the left atrium is higher than the right atrial pressure, will cause mechanically closure of this foramen ovale also. Okay, high pressure here, low pressure here. So the septum will be closed automatically. So now the foramen become the fossa ovalis. Ductus venosus after birth will also become occluded. The sphincter constricts so that all blood will enter the IVC through the hepatic sinusoid. No more ductus venosus. This occurs few minutes after birth. And the ductus arteriosus that connecting the pulmonary trunk and the descending aorta become occluded. This allows blood from the right ventricle go to the lungs, where it will be oxygenated. Oxygen is mediated by bradykinin, a substance released from the lungs during their initial inflation. So these are the remnant structures of fetal circulation. So umbilical vein become the ligamentum teres of the liver. Okay, umbilical arteries become two parts. The proximal part will become superior vesical artery that supply the urinary bladder, while the intra-abdominal part becomes the medial umbilical ligament. Okay, ductus venosus become ligamentum venosum, and ductus arteriosus become ligamentum arteriosum. Foramen ovale become fossa ovalis. Foramen jadi fossa. Okay, this is the ligamentum teres, the round ligament, the liver. And this is the medial umbilical ligament, the remnant of the umbilical arteries, while the proximal part become the superior vesical artery that supply the bladder, the urinary bladder. Ligamentum venosum become the remnant of the ductus venosus. Remember the ductus venosus that divide the liver in anatomical division of the right and the left lobe of the liver. It's by the presence of the ligamentum venosum. And the ligamentum arteriosum is the obliterated ductus arteriosus, the remnant of the ductus arteriosus. Fossa ovalis is the remnant of the foramen ovale. Okay, what happened if fetal separation persists after birth? So the ductus arteriosus fails to close, causes patent ductus arteriosus. Foramen ovale fails to close, causes arterial septal defects. Ductus venosus fail to close, will cause patent ductus venosus. Okay, what is PDA? PDA, patent ductus arteriosus. Ductus arteriosus is persists. This will cause excessive blood flow to the lungs and eventually may lead to pulmonary hypertension. Spontaneous closure is common, but if it is still persistently patent, surgical closure is needed. Alright, ASD, arterial septal defect. Okay, arterial septal defect means septum between the right and the left atrium is patent. Okay, one of the causes of the ASD is the patent foramen ovale. Most of the time it is asymptomatic, but if the bridge is greater, blood may travel from the right atrium to the left atrium, which may lead to pulmonary hypertension and right heart failure in severe ASD if it is untreated. PVD is patent ductus venosus. This leads to portosystemic shunt. PSS is a bypass of the liver by the body's circulatory system, because the blood does not enter the liver sinusoid. There will be no detoxification process. This will cause toxin to accumulate in the blood and brain. The treatment is surgical closure. I think that's all. I wish you all the best and thank you for your attention.